And on a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. A historic day in Indian politics. A sea of orange spread across the nation. Modi has won with a landslide victory. We're going to talk about all that and much more with an elite panel here in our studio. But before that, a look at the headlines. The verdict is out. NDA has recorded a landslide victory in the 16th Lok Sabha election celebrations all across the country. BJP records its best ever performance, set to become the single largest party with a clear majority of first since 1984. Congress reduced to its lowest ever tally. Party may not cross 50 seats, set to lose right to leader of opposition seat. Sonia Rahul take the blame. AIADMK, TMC and Biju Janata Dal lead among the regional parties. All three virtually sweep their respective states. BJP credits Narendra Modi for its historic win. Modi is set to become the 15th Prime Minister of India. Wishes pour in for Narendra Modi. Well, let me first introduce our guests on the show. We have with us, of course, Rakesh Bhattabyal, who is a historian. Welcome to the show. We also have with us Ajay Guddavarti, who is with the JNU, of course, and we also have Jyoti Malhotra, senior journalist. We'll also be joined by Renuka Chaudhary, the spokesperson of the Congress, in just a bit. But let me first pose my question to Jyoti. Jyoti, what do you believe are the factors that really influence these polls? Three main factors that influence these polls.
The first, that it was an anti-Congress vote. I think the people were fed up with price rise, misgovernance and corruption. I think those are very, very important issues. The second, that it was a pro-Narendra Modi vote, in the sense that there are huge expectations now that Narendra Modi will fix all these problems. And the third is that there was, I think, serious polarization across the North Indian heartland. I think what Amit Shah did in Western UP after the Muzaffarnagar riots, I think Yogi Adityanath did for Eastern UP or Purvanchal. And I think we cannot, this issue hasn't come out as much, but we cannot underestimate the fact that there was serious Hindu-Muslim polarization. And also, I think the RSS has played a big role. Mr. Modi, of course, he was the leader, he was the face. But the RSS, the Karyakartas of the RSS have played a very big role in his victory.
Now, Rakesh, if I come to you, of course, the mandate is very clear. The people want a stable government, and that's what's been voted in this time around. Now, clearly, of course, the people have seen a lot of hope in the BJP, a lot of hope in Modi. So the challenge really begins now.
Challenge is not just for Modi as such, but challenge is for all of us. Because after a long time, you have an opposition which wanted to be in the ruling seat with a clear mandate. And first time RSS BJP has a clear mandate and it can do anything that it wants.
Yes.
First. Now on the other side, first time we have an opposition, the national opposition, which is decimated, 46, 43 seats. So there cannot be a match in the parliament. Now the other side, the opposition which have come, is extreme regionalist, Tamil Nadu and Bengal.
Yes.
And both have their own issues to settle with. So therefore, we are in a situation where vigilance is the first thing from the society at large, and second, for the ruling party itself, the tolerance. Generally there's a proverb, or the story goes, when the boy or the child of the family becomes bigger and becomes adult and it becomes boisterous, so what the parents used to do is to get him married. Now first time the Uddand son or the child has been married to power. Now the reason where Congress lost is the perception in the people that there are leaders who are divorced from responsibility. And first time people have given BJP responsibility and asking them not to do the same thing as Congress does and delegate power to Nagpur.
Okay.
So these are the indications. This is the first time that BJP has power and it has the responsibility to divorce itself from its other power centers, which happened in 10 and 7 Janpath and Rescourse. Now the divorce has to be effected from Delhi and Nagpur.
Okay, all right. We are joined by Renuka Chaudhary, of course, of the Congress at the moment. Ms. Chaudhary, I mean, it's a bad day at the office for you. terrible results coming in from across the country as far as the Congress is concerned. Where does the Congress go from here? Do you go back to the drawing board? You know, a major rethink is required now. And also, are you going to fix accountability? That's the real question.
Yes, I'm certain that the President and Vice President of the Congress Party are going to ask tough questions now. There really is no choice. And accountability will be pinned and heads will roll, I'm certain about it. And that is how much I can say at this point. We are deeply disappointed with what has happened. It's not because the Congress hasn't worked or that we didn't do well by the nation.
You say you're disappointed. Ms. Chaudhary, you say you're disappointed. Where do you believe that you've gone wrong?
Like I was saying, there could have been a deep fatigue factor, and perhaps that we didn't reinvent ourselves in time, keeping pace with the changed perceptions. And really it's premature for us to comment on this because we really need to microanalyze and get back. We'll have to rewind a bit and replay to see where were the positives of leadership locally and centrally, and what were the failures that we overlooked and didn't really take action on immediately, which should have been done. On the other side, there was macro level changes that were being brought about, and I mean, even our worst critics won't say that the Congress didn't deliver on so many fronts. I mean, right through the droughts and everything, we had them in our Mahatma Gandhi NREGS, which was succor for the people who were experiencing the negative vagaries of weather. We actually had children going to school. They're out of labor fields and into school. Yes, the price rise perhaps and the global conditions, unfortunately at that time, did cause a dent in our armor, but then we were the comeback kids. We were actually taking the steps to rectify that. Anyway, let's see the many, and it's not just 1 or 10 issues that have resulted in this, but honest introspection. We will be able to peg the issues. And
what about a really aggressive campaign? Of course, on one hand, we saw Narendra Modi go all out, go all guns blazing, whereas the Congress somewhere deep down seemed a little subdued of sort. Are you going to change that strategy and go all out the next time around?
Yes, of course. It's not that we will do what the BJP did or someone else did. We'll have to see what the next time needs, and we'll deliver on those fronts. Our perceptions and our ability to clinch that will be not be found wanting. Our campaign did kick off a little late perhaps, and considering the aggressive and the kind of money that was spent on the BJP campaign, we didn't budget for that.
Okay, a lot of things, of course, for the Congress to talk, to go back to the drawing board and think about, Ajay. But do you believe that somewhere there was a disconnect really between the common man and the Congress?
No, I think there is a serious puzzle there, you know, that Congress in its entire 10-year period, along with growth on corporate capital, also stood for welfare. I mean, look at the range of welfare policies that Congress has legislated.
But somewhere it has not struck a chord with the common man.
If you go by that logic, then how do you explain Mr. Narendra Modi's victory? He has not even uttered the word social welfare, and his entire campaign has been on big money and big capital, and he has nowhere mentioned that he is going to roll out welfare policies. In fact, I mean, his first round, if you followed his campaign, his first bit of campaign was actually a bit of critique of welfare policies. So this is still a bit of a puzzle for somebody like me trying to understand that people are angry with Congress for not having implemented welfare policies effectively. And I have done a couple of surveys, and in North India we found that people said in NREGA there's a lot of leakage. Policy is good, that's how they won in 2009, they won. And Congress strategy was right in the sense that food security bill was a good strategy to come back. You know, but of course it was not implemented in time, there were all these problems. But if this is a story why Congress lost, how do you explain the way for Narendra Modi? That people have voted in such large numbers to somebody who is not even talking about social welfare. he's simply talking about big development. He's talking about bullet trains, and he's talking about, Singapore, and he's talking about all
So are you saying this is unrealistic?
I mean, there is a bit of a puzzle for a political scientist like me to understand as to why do people are angry with Congress for not having done enough welfare, would opt for someone who doesn't even talk about welfare. I mean, what is the puzzle here? I think it is a dilemma, a bit of a dilemma as to how Modi has. I think I agree with the earlier response that the one thing that strikes about Modi is that neoliberal reforms has brought a faceless growth. You can't pin responsibility on anyone, and Congress has added to that confusion. Congress was trying this two-center theory, that Gandhi family was the face of welfare, and Montek, Manmohan were the face of the growth, and there was a checkmate sort of a thing. They would do something. Gandhi family would check. When food security was legislated, Prime Minister was unhappy with it. NREG was legislated. Montek Singh was unhappy. There was this confusion going on. So it was right that there's nobody on whom one could lay responsibility on in Congress. I think in that context, and part of the explanation that one can think of with this wave is that I think what stands out is that Modi is someone who stuck out his neck and said, look, I am here, I will be responsible for what I do. I think this helps in a neoliberal period. That when everything is so faceless, there's one individual who says that I will be responsible, you can hold me responsible if I don't deliver.
Clearly it has worked for Narendra Modi and the BJP, Jyoti, and we've seen a different kind of a campaign this time around, a presidential kind of a campaign this time around. Is that the way forward? Are we going to see a lot more of it in the coming years?
I don't agree. I think India is such a diverse country that you cannot have this one man or one woman kind of person that will lead a party. Listen, it's not as if the Congress party hasn't played this card. There has been Indira Gandhi who in the past has played this card. I think we're all sort of far too young to remember. So in today's politics, Narendra Modi stands out. And the big difference, of course, between Mrs. Gandhi, Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Narendra Modi is that today the BJP is like a machine, I mean, the way they ran this campaign, it was superbly done. It was organized. It was just an incredibly worked together plan. And look at the opposition. There was a clear vacuum of power. The Congress party just was absent in this entire campaign. They didn't know what they wanted. They kept talking about welfare schemes, but I think India has changed. I think India has changed. We don't want to be given doles. We don't want to be given subsidies or welfare schemes. I think people are now proud. Don't forget that the role of the media has been so incredible. In every village, in every town, there's so much that people know what's going on across the world. In the villages of UP, they know who Obama is. So in this kind of a change that's going on, who is tapped into this sort of aspirational, calm resentment that here you had, crores of rupees that were supposedly siphoned off, not supposedly, they were siphoned off during for the 2G scandal, for the Colgate. Why didn't this money come to the people of India? And I agree with what Ajay is saying, is that the corporates have played a huge role in this. There's no question about it, the kind of money that was employed. So I think if you look at all these factors together, this is a new India, but I think unfortunately the Congress party was not able to tap it. There was so much confusion. What is it that they want? Do they want these NREGA type of schemes? So unfortunately for the Congress, but I think if they must learn a lesson from this.
All right, they must learn a lesson from this. Ms. Chaudhary, let me come back to you. Of course, Jyoti is saying that in fact the Congress has been decimated to such an extent that if you look at the figures right now, of course, still hovering around the 44-45 mark, you don't even stand the right, of course, to a leader of the opposition now. So how I mean, your take on that?
Look, several factors that contribute. Of course, the rest of you are all experts there, but we are the field workers. I mean, I work with the grassroots at my district. So, I think what happened is UP won, and the growth engine that came in there. There is a a very strong aspirational India and youngsters. The big segment of youngsters who came in, and sudden wealth which came in. You saw the middle class and the upper middle class buying a second vehicle, transport, maybe a car and a scooter, a second television, families, tourism went up. You saw internal tourism and external tourism. Families planned on holidays. There was a very good feel-good factor. And a lot of youngsters went abroad to study. The world-class institutes came into India. Congress delivered on all those fronts. We provided the fundamentals. When the downturn started, because of various factors and the global, problems that US contributed a lot to that. When the downturn started, there was a kind of uneasiness and a panic amongst the masses saying, well, what happened to the good times? We're so used to that, so what are we going to get next?
Why didn't
And
the Congress respond
that's
to
the
that?
gap that we didn't perhaps stride into and reinvent ourselves and say, yes, we are the guys who are going to continue delivering something that we've done over hundreds of years in the past. We have always delivered to the nation. Somewhere there was a trust deficit that came in, which I think the BJP very effectively sort of plugged it, and they have shown them the carry forward of that good time without addressing any of the social sector values or the truths that are required to be heard. Well, let's see, this government has come out and they've raised the expectations so much. It's a far more complex thing to deliver on those fronts. Let's see how this carries forward, whereas for us, we will be pulling up our socks and tightening our belts and going forward.
Okay, you're going to be pulling up your socks, and of course you have some time to think about all of that, of course, now 5 more years. But Rakesh, I mean, let's talk about foreign policy now as far as the new government is concerned. I mean, of course, the BJP or the people are hoping that the foreign policy is going to be far more stronger than what it currently is at the moment. But are we going to see a considerable change with Narendra Modi?
So foreign policy has always been strong, because it's not about a strong and weak foreign policy. What we will witness, and we have expert here, Jyoti has been writing over the last 2 decades on this, but the moment you hear Mahinda Rajpath saying that we are natural allies, so we are quite scared, because, and Sheikh Hasina will be very scared, because with the BJP win here, Jamaat is going to be mustering its strength there in Bangladesh. Nawaz Sharif is already invited. So all these, it will change regional dynamics in the sense that India has always, and Pandit Nehru has very beautifully cited this in his story of India, that India has been always a cushioning place. It cushions, it absorbs all the shocks. I hope with the huge majority that the government has, it does not dispel those who want to do India to play the shock absorber. On the other hand, the entire confusion, including the vote in Iran and Syria and West Asia is our natural geographical proximate ally, in the sense that they are geographically our civilizational friends. And BJP's internal campaigns, the RSS campaign, has always linked West Asia as Islamic West Asia. West Asia is not Islamic, West Asia is West Asia, west of India. Therefore, the worry for us is that NATO is there in Pakistan. So NATO is there on our border. Afghanistan is in the cauldron. So in this kind of situation, I think there is some bit of realignment within Sangh and BJP's own thinking process regarding West Asia, and that is our main challenge.
Okay, Jyoti, of course, Narendra Modi came out and spoke his heart out when the Indian soldiers were beheaded on the line of control. He came out and said that, Indians are spineless, we need a stronger foreign policy and all of that. And then he also went on, he's come out and criticized the government on several occasions as far as foreign policy is concerned. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? I mean, can Narendra Modi deliver on some of those things that he's promised?
I would agree with you. I think it is easier said than done. The biggest challenges will be in the neighborhood, which is in South Asia, as Rakesh has pointed out. There were, in fact, Modi himself made some comments on Bangladeshi refugees, as you remember.
Yes.
He sort of distinguished between Hindu Bangladeshis who come into India and Muslims who come into India, and his argument is that the Muslims are economic refugees and therefore India is a poor country and there is no space for them, but Hindus are leaving Bangladesh. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument, and I think if they continue down that path, it is going to be seriously stressful, not only for this government but for the people of India, because what they're doing is, as Rakesh pointed out, India is such a diverse country. We've always been welcoming of all kinds of people. So that's one. And I'm not even going to get into the whole Pakistan-Afghanistan issue. Those are sort of much more obvious. But I think what will be very interesting immediately is what Narendra Modi will do with America. He's also been asked that question, and he said, well, he has this vibrant Gujarat summit every year and lots of Americans come to it. There's a lot of US investment inside Gujarat. But when he goes to the US, I think, there will be some sort of a tension there. But having said that, I also feel that he's a very practical man. He's a Gujarati, remember. So, I think the power of money is a very powerful thing. And I think that India and US will have to, I think the Americans will have to also pipe down considerably. They have also been extremely rude about a leader of ours. Some committee on religious freedom decided in 2005 that they will not give him a visa. I mean, anyway, we can all take views on that. But now that he's the Prime Minister of the country, I think he's our Prime Minister, and we may disagree with him.
The world will stand up and watch. They will respect us and they will fear us, is what he said in a few campaigns earlier. Do you see that happening?
I don't think so. I think these are, what is this? Will fear us. It's almost making us sound as if we're in an akhada or something, and that, that the Prime Minister is going to be the chief wrestler.
North Korea.
This is a bit silly to talk like this. I think India is a responsible country. We are a nuclear country, and we have to take our responsibilities very, very seriously. And I think we should.
I think we're pulling out a soundbite that he's talking about. But anyways, Ms. Chaudhary, the problem really for the Congress is the BJP can do anything and get away with it at this point in time because you don't really have the numbers to oppose the BJP in Parliament at the moment. So how are you going to tackle this situation, and how are you going to tackle the BJP when it comes down to this?
I don't think you should just go by the mathematics of numbers in Parliament in the future, because the BJP has, along with this fantastic win of theirs, has also got a fantastic responsibility. And they've raised the expectations so high, and that people will expect delivery from tomorrow, or rather, as they say in advertising parlance, yesterday. So everyone's going to expect a magic wand which is going to put things into place, and your economy is going to grow overnight, and you're going to give employment overnight. Now, in a democracy, while we all indulge in rhetoric and we make these promises and we appear, these are perceptions, but if you don't follow up like we know best now, we will pay the price for it. And that is the biggest challenge for the BJP. And it doesn't matter whether you're 1 man or 10 people in Parliament, when you raise a voice and there is a resonance that is felt across societies, then it is a natural culmination of pressures that work, and which will ensure that the government will have to constantly do course correction, deliver or perish. That is the way of democracy. It goes with the turf.
Indeed, of course, deliver or perish, and the BJP has been voted in with a lot of hope, of course. But Ajay, if you look at it really, as far as the BJP is concerned, there is a lot that they can do, and they can change the entire dynamics with the kind of numbers that they have at the moment. But what do you expect to see in the future now?
I think
do you see a major overhaul of sorts?
I think so. Given the kind of numbers that BJP have, and given the kind of the leader Mr. Narendra Modi is, I think BJP is going to now have a very long-term planning. With the kind of RSS backing, RSS always has this very long-term planning. So I think at last, in that sense, there's a very decisive victory that BJP has, and I think I see two very parallel moves. In one sense, in the way Narendra Modi can afford to reproduce the Gujarat model at the national level, is go for a high corporate growth. And in that, I think Modi will be better than what Congress has done. Better coordinated, more decisive action. He can push policies because he takes, in Gujarat he had 14 portfolios. So he has that kind of a leadership. But that's not going to be the only story. I think that is going to be compensated on ground with a new kind of Hindutva agenda, which is not going to be the kind of agenda that we saw in Gujarat with an open riots. But I think they will move towards some sort of a low intensity communalism. And Muzaffarnagar was, I understand, seems to be some sort of an initial experiment.
Are you saying you're going to see a lot more Muzaffarnagars in the years to come?
No, I'm saying that it will not be Muzaffarnagar in terms of riots, but what we are going to see is a corporate growth combined with a low intensity communalization.
And what is this low intensity communalization?
Is that there will be polarization, the kind of rhetoric that you saw of Mr. Modi, not giving tickets to Muslims in UP, for instance. I mean, this whole agenda, that there's something new about Modi is terribly overplayed. When you look at his entire campaign, and you will see that it's rigged with Hindutva agenda. I mean, he's contesting for Varanasi, he is not giving tickets to Muslim, the space he gave it to Amit Shah, all this is, the story is there. But what is different is that what BJP now understands is that it can't combine the new type of a development model with the Gujarat sort of experiment. What they're going to do is a low-lying polarization, and the tension should remain. And that is going to be the USP.
I'll just come back to you in just a bit, because I just saw Renuka Chaudhary, of course, raising her hand. I guess she wants to come in on this. Go ahead, Renuka.
Yeah, I was going to say what Mr. Ajay has just said. We have to come out and say the word. There has been a Hindu polarization that has happened across the country. We'll have to wait and see the booth analysis and the district analysis to see how exactly this polarization has divided and where it went. So the Hindutva that the BJP spoke of is going to appear to be a lot more aggressive in the future, because he has assiduously, Mr. Modi has maintained that profile and inexorably worked towards it. So today that is going to change a lot of the rhetoric that other political parties have given out, and the thinking of mentalities that these are niche vote banks and what happens there in the future. So we just have to see that. And then also, having said all of this, we'll have to see how this kind of thinking is going to impact when we interact on our foreign policy to different nations. We are the leaders of the SAARC countries. We'll have to see how this impacts us socio-politically, socio-religiously, and where the political discourse is going to work parallelly, and where it unifies with the rest of the nation. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch how he's going to straddle all of this.
All right. We are joined on the phone line by Mr. Satpal Jain of the BJP at the moment. Mr. Jain, congratulations.